everybody, it's Jen Budd, former senior patrol agent in the United States Border Patrol, immigrant rights activist, wrote the book Against the Wall, my journey from a Border Patrol agent to an immigrant rights activist. You can get that anywhere online. It was released over 3 years ago, um, and I think it's actually selling more now because people are saying that it's really kind of predicted all the things, a lot of the things that we're seeing now and the problems that we're having now with ICE and Border Patrol and CBP and the mass deportation and the immigration agencies. So if you want to understand who these people are in your streets kidnapping your neighbors, pick up that book and it'll help you a lot. Um, I think so. Today is September 3rd, 2025. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done a video and talked to you. As you can imagine, I'm a one-woman show, and so I have to research and write and produce my own writings on Substack and Ghost. I appreciate all of the followers. Certainly all of the paid followers helps a lot. And I've been trying to go over to Ghost because it is not tied to a platform that supports Nazis or alt-right. And it's not tied, at least I don't think it's tied to a billionaire. I'm not sure, but it's more of a writing platform. So if you subscribe to me on Substack, I wouldn't mind if you went over to Ghost. At the same time, I'm going to say on Substack right now, because that's where the majority of my earnings come from, and that's what pays for Ghost. So if you're a subscriber, I also want to let you know that we've done very well this year. We have paid for the adoption of a water barrel, 55-gallon water barrel in Sonora, Arizona, the Sonoran Desert. That barrel helps save lives, not just migrant lives. It helps save agents' lives, and it also helps save just anyone out there hiking in the Sonoran Desert. I know it might seem strange to some of you. I've hiked the desert enough in my life. I don't really want to do it anymore. But some people do like the desert and they like to hike. And sometimes they get into trouble and so forth. So your subscriptions have helped pay for that. It helps pay for the way I videotape these, which I use as Zoom, and I also use Zoom, that Zoom account to conduct my meetings and stuff, a lot of times that I need to do. And then your other subscriptions so far have been going to a victim of the Border Patrol who was shot in the head and cannot work anymore. It's helping her daughter get through school, and it's helping the rest of her family survive because she can no longer work, and she's in Mexico, just so you know. And so it's gone to all those little things. Once we get closer to the end of the year, I'll look and see how much there is, and then we'll decide what to do with the rest of it. Sometimes it goes to helping me with my travel expenses and stuff. I think my subscriptions are about 3,500 a year. Maybe I can take in, not that much. So I have about a little over 4,000 followers, but as you can imagine, it's not everybody can afford. The nice thing I like about Ghost too is that I can put a tip on there. So if you like a specific article a lot or a specific, I'm kind of working on trying to figure out how to put podcast on there. My understanding is I have to go to even a more expensive tier to get that, so might not be able to do that just yet. But so far I've been able to at least support the writing. But on Ghost, the nice thing is you can just do like a $5 tip or something like that if you like a specific article, and you don't have to commit, to $10 a month or $5 a month or whatever it is. So that's just an update on what's going on. For me right now, my big project I'm working on is the story of how the critical incident teams covered up the Valeria Monique Tachkin Alvarado case. She was killed here in San Diego in 2012. The reason why I'm going back to that case in 2012 is that the chief of San Diego sector at that time was former Chief Rodney Scott. And if you pay attention to immigration news a lot, he just became the commissioner of CBP's Custom and Border Protection, which is the parent agency to the Border Patrol. That's an unusual move because there are plenty high-ranking CBP officers that are more qualified to do that. And the way that in talking with CBP officers, they're pretty pissed off. They're pretty pissed off that they brought in a Border Patrol agent, and essentially it tells them that they're not trusted to lead their own agency. And it means that they're going to be turned into less professional agents and more thugs like the United States Border Patrol and ICE is. So that's what we have to look forward to. They've also made his deputy director of CBP is also former Border Patrol chief. I've talked about it before on here. His name is Chief John Modlin, though now he's deputy commissioner. I want to say deputy commissioner chief, but it's deputy commissioner of CBP, John Modlin. He was the former chief of Tucson sector, which if you follow my work, you know that's where all the pedophiles and a lot of the rapists are put to work in the Border Patrol because they have a ton that are arrested there. Plus, additionally, the Tucson sector has the most cover-up teams, and they have the best ability to hide the crimes that the agents are doing. So if you have a workforce that's criminal that you're trying to hide, you put it in the sector that you have the most protections. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that, I don't think it's a coincidence at all. It's not happenstance that all of a sudden Donald Trump has put Border Patrol agents in charge. So I want to talk about too a few things that we talked about last time. We were talking about the kidnappings in LA. They're continuing. They're not doing as much performative stuff. They're just going around kidnapping people and not trying to make a bigger show of it. They have been ordered by a judge to reduce that and not racially profile people. That has not stopped them from doing it. They are continuing to do it. They are just not as flamboyant about it as they used to be. So they are ignoring the judge's orders and they are violating the law, which they're already violating the law by what they're doing. But it's important to point this out. I do recommend still hooking up with LA Taco on all the social media sites. They have the best, most accurate reporting of what is going on with the kidnappings in LA and any kind of protest that would be going on in LA. I want to mention, I heard someone call me today, this morning, in a panic saying that, we've heard that the next place they're going to go is Chicago, and Chicago is getting prepared for that. They said today that Trump had announced, this is August 3rd again, had announced that because everybody knew they were going to Chicago, they're not going to, so they're going to go to New Orleans. And I think that's kind of a ruse. It is one of the reasons why Border Patrol and immigration agencies aren't typically seen as, and this is what we're going to talk about, seen as national security agencies. They do not have the professionalism, they do not have the education, and they do not have the ethics and the morals to not leak shit. And so that's why they always leak where they're going to go ahead of time because they get too excited and they're like, so they so they tell people what's going on and this stuff leaks out. And then they see people starting to respond to that and prepare themselves in Chicago and other places like they should. They have enough people to do damage in all these cities. That's what I'm going to tell you. If you're in Chicago, you know you're going to be a target. If you're in Boston, you know you're going to be a target. New York, LA, San Diego to a certain extent, San Francisco, any of your other really big blue powerhouses. I would expect to see some stuff in Atlanta. And New Orleans, my concern in New Orleans is, in Chicago, quite frankly, is there's going to be a lot of overlap into the Black population and into the brown population who are illegal, who are here legally. Let me say that. I know I slur sometimes. That's my Alabama accent. I apologize. I think we're going to see, obviously, an increase in the number of people who are of legal status or even United States citizens being arrested. And the main thing I want you to focus on and think about is we got two things going on right now. Well, we got a lot going on, but and as far as what I'm talking about, we've got a threat of a government shutdown on September 30th. And then October 1st starts the fiscal year for the federal government. So it doesn't go from January to December. Fiscal years go according to how companies were set up when they were set up, or governments. And so for the US government, it's October. So it runs from October to September. And so that means you're going to run out of money on September 30th for everything. Social Security, disability, SNAP, whatever's left of these programs. On October 1st, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars are going to go to the immigration agencies. So we should think back about the protest about defund the police. And this is what I'm concerned about. Obviously, it's going to go one of two ways. They're either going to pass the budget because they want to get to the midterms, at least, before they really start pulling the resources back from people, from American citizens. That could be it. Or they could just let everything not be funded. One of the ways to destroy the federal government is simply not fund it. So we think back to defund the police. In the federal government, in all governments, even state governments, you have the act of passing a law and creating these agencies and creating these policies. And then you have to have appropriations, which is the funding of the bills, okay? So you can pass as many laws as you want to, but if you can't get the people in appropriations to give you the money to make what you've ordered happen, then you're essentially dead in the water. So that's one of the ways where opposition, it's kind of an accountability thing. So it keeps somebody like Donald Trump from doing this. The problem right now is that they're in charge of everything. They're in charge of appropriations. They're in charge of everything. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, whether or not funding for all these other services stop and the funding just for police and detentions and arrest of people continue happening. Either way, whatever happens, whether they pass a temporary bill to keep the other agencies going, to keep programs of assistance going, or whether they don't, on October 1st, the immigration enforcement agencies, ICBP and Border Patrol, are going to have more money than they've ever known what to do with. And I think that's kind of why we see a little bit of lull since the MacArthur Park big stage presentation that we saw Border Patrol doing in LA. And I think there was a big cannabis raid, and they were claiming they found 10 of the, or 6 of the 300,000 missing children or something like that. It's just ridiculous. These made up numbers these people come up with. So it's been a little bit more just they're going out and individual people are recording it, putting it like on TikTok or Instagram or something like that. And I think what the reason why that is because, once they got that passed, then they all had to sit down and prep. Like, okay, like, what are we going to do first? Where are we going to spend the money? Where are we going to put all these people? What are we going to buy? Right? But I do want to go back to one other thing we talked about last time, was the Iranian terror groups. So you remember last, it seems like it was so long ago. It seems like it was like last year, but it wasn't. It was less than a month ago, I think, or maybe a month ago, that we were talking about in LA. There's a video that I put out, the full video on one of my podcasts. You can go back and see it. A couple, maybe no more than 2 podcasts ago. Where they were in LA in a certain neighborhood saying that they were there. It was, I think, Border Patrol, BORTAC, which is their SWAT. So I think it was Border Patrol, maybe ICE SRTs, which is like their SWATs. That SRT stands for Special Response Team. But they were dressed in fatigues and like they were SWATs. And they went into this one woman's home, and she ends up on the street. And the local Fox News there in LA is covering it. But a neighbor is filming Fox News interviewing the woman from the house that they went into.
what she had to say. Both Fox News and Telemundo were there when I was there. They were interviewing her as well. What she told us was the following.
They gave us an address, but on the warrant it says 16108. It don't say 16110. But they said they have access to go through the whole house.
Were they rough with you? Did they take you to the ground?
No, they didn't take me to the ground. They pushed me. They manhandled me a little bit, but they didn't put me to the ground.
It was a big surprise to you.
Yes, very. Yeah.
Does this surprise you that this goes on in your neighborhood? It happens to you?
This neighborhood is quiet. This is the first time I ever heard anything out here, so I didn't know what was going on. Yeah, they just gave me the warrant when they left.
But the address didn't match on the warrant.
No, it says that address, but they came from both sides. They said they only took stuff out of there, but they ransacked my place and.
But that's not legal, so
not.
You have a case.
Yeah.
How does this make you feel?
I'm
violated.
I'm upset. I have high blood pressure, so I shouldn't be stressing out, and I'm very stressed out right now. Very stressed out.
Was there anybody else in the house?
No one was with me. They did arrest someone out of there too. I don't know what they named, but they did take someone from out of that house.
And did they take anything else out of the house, like boxes or
Yeah,
anything?
they took a lot of stuff.
Out of this front house right here.
House.
And now, is this front house a rental or is it?
Oh yes, I have my landlord on here now.
Murphy, and you live here?
I do. Yeah,
How long have you lived here?
7 months.
7 months.
And you have no idea why they came here? Nothing, no warning, anything.
Did they give you a reason?
They said after they were finished that they were looking for someone that gave this address as their address.
Imagine my surprise when I tuned into the news that night and saw what they had to say was happening, which was this.
Customs and Border Protection says agents were serving a search warrant at what they're calling a human smuggling hub with ties to national security threats. Earlier this week, CBP said several Iranian nationals were arrested at the same address. CBP says those taken into custody include people on the FBI's terror watch list.
So now this is a human smuggling operation with multiple people from the FBI's most wanted list.
They didn't show the video that said that there were no Iranian terrorists. They reported flat out that they got two members of an Iranian terror group. Now, before I went on just now to record this on September 3rd, what's the time? 3:06 Pacific, 3:06 p.m. Pacific. There's no follow-up on these guys that were supposedly members of an Iranian terror group. So that's how fast they can turn around and use this intelligence that Donald Trump was thinking about attacking Iran's nuclear facility. And the Border Patrol turns around and tells the press and everybody standing there, oh, this is about Iranian terror groups in the U.S. The reason why they do this, and I want all y'all in Chicago, New Orleans, everywhere, listen to this. The reason why they do this is the same thing they do when they say, oh, this isn't an immigration raid. This is a drug raid, y'all. The reason why they'll say it's a drug raid or they'll say it's a terrorist raid. Why do they do that when it's not? It's clearly not. They do that, number one, so they can get backup from police. They do that, number two, so they can get the media there. And they do that, number three, so that olives go well. And you just do whatever you need to do, sir. Bam. But here's the thing. I looked this morning and I looked just now before I got on. There are no casework in the federal database. There's nothing reported about these Iranian terrorists being arrested, who they are, what they were doing in the United States. There's no disposition. There's nothing. So what the administration knows is that the next day there's going to be something else, and the next day there's going to be something else, and the next day there's going to be something else. And everybody's going to forget that they did this and that they were wrong. And then they went in and roughed up this woman and fucked up her house. And they did all this illegally. And we're not looking for Iranian terrorists. They're not looking for drug smugglers. They have said flat out, they're just looking for anybody who doesn't have papers. Whether you're DEA, ATF, FBI, Border Patrol, anybody. They're just looking for your papers. They're looking to get and arrest everybody that they can that is specifically of color, though they will take white undocumented immigrants as well, because that always gets you extra points in the beer pool at the end of the night if you can get a white undocumented person, let me tell you. So when they come to your community in Chicago and they say, this isn't an immigration raid, this is a drug raid, you're going to know that they're full of shit. And you think that they're probably right because they're dressed as if they're going in for a very serious thing, are they not? Not just for somebody who doesn't have papers, who's working, nighttime, doing whatever. They're lying to you all, and you need to call them out on this. And you need to call your local media when they say things like they got a terror group, or they got a this and that, or it was a drug raid. Show me the proof. They're lying to you all when they say that. And your local police and your local sheriffs, when they turn around and say, oh yeah, we were working with ICE, but that was a drug raid, make them prove it. Every single time they've been lying. When they said that these people were the worst of the worst, they're not. They've been lying. We've caught them lying over and over and over again. And what we see from the right-wing media is they report that. So if you're just some right-wing nut job, or just some right-wing person, let's just say you're not a nut job, you're just conservative, and you typically watch Fox News, and it's on in the background and this and that. Maybe you're not MAGA, but it's on in the background, and you hear they got 2 Iranian, they found 7 there a couple of weeks before. Oh, I'm glad they got those people. That's all they need. They will never come back and revisit it. And even if they do come back and revisit it and say, we were wrong, we misreported it, what are the odds that those same people are going to see that? And so it's funny when I have people contact me to say that I don't know what I'm talking about or whatever. They'll bring up things like this and they'll go, I know for a fact, I watched on TV that they got Iranian terrorists. And I'm like, yeah, I know they said that, but that's not true. You have to do the follow-up because the media is not doing the follow-up. They're just telling you the story, the current story in that moment. So what I want to talk to you about today is the Border Patrol Union. And the reason why I want to talk to you about this is Donald Trump, within the last few days, has issued an executive order that bans the unions of the Bureau of Reclamation, NASA, the National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service, the National Weather Service, Office of Commissioner of Patents, Patent and Trademark Office, PTO, and the U.S. Agency for Global Media. He's banned all their unions. And the policy that he is using, the law that he's using to do this, is called 5 U.S.C. 7112, lowercase b, number 6. That is a labor law. It is a national security labor law. And I originally wrote about this even prior to 2023, but the latest article I have on it is from April 2023. And you can go to either my Borderland Talk on Substack or on Ghost, and there you can see the links. I'm going to show you some of the docs as I talk about this. I could see, so of these agencies, I could see maybe NASA having some national security links. I could see the not the National Environmental Satellite Data and Information, not the National Weather Service, not the Patent Office, and not really Agency for Global Media. This law, 7112, typically applies to law enforcement agencies. And it is the reason why the FBI, the ATF, DEA, CIA, NSA do not have bargaining units or unions. And the Border Patrol and CBP have had unions because they were not designated as national security agencies. They did not have as much information and as much to do with intelligence and national security as they do now. Now that we have deemed asylum to be a national security issue and immigration, which both are legal, to be a national security issue, they both have national security relevance. But there's more to it than that. So when I saw this executive order, I was like, what? Why is he doing that? Well, he's doing that because when you have a national security designation from the President of the United States, that allows you to bat back FOIAs or Freedom of Information request from media or from rights groups or whatever, because you could say, no, I'm involved in national security. I can't tell you all that. And I can't even tell you why I can't tell you all that. Okay. So it gives you more authority to be less accountable is what it does. And it is over the years allowed them to even create channels where agents are working on the radio channels. And if they don't want people to know what they're doing, they switch to what's called a tactical channel. And that automatically is covered under this national security thing. And so if you're trying to prove your case that you didn't assault an agent or you didn't do whatever it is you're accused of, and they switch to a tactical channel, you're shit out of luck. The courts won't be able to get it. They'll say, oh, national security, you can't see that evidence. And it will not go into court. So it's highly problematic. And that is what they've been doing over the years, is using this designation to be able to violate people's rights and get away with it and not be caught. So it's interesting that in 2020, under Trump's first administration, that he designated both the Border Patrol and CBP as national security agencies. And they've been able to maintain that security for 5 years. But yet these other agencies, now that he's deemed them to be national security agencies, he's going to say, no, that violates the law. You can't have it. Well, why is Border Patrol not violating the law? And why is CBP not violating the law? Well, that's because Donald Trump has used both those agencies, including ICE, nefariously to help him win the war on the border and the argument that he's better on the border than the Democrats are. He essentially used those agencies as political weapons against U.S. citizens and residents of this country. You got to think back to the Biden administration. During the Biden administration, remember, the Border Patrol was on fire. Their union reps were all over Fox News.
Open borders.
And so during the last administration with Biden, and certainly during the Obama administration, the Border Patrol Union has been acting kind of as a foil against Democratic led administrations. And then they fall in line and support only Donald Trump and Republican administrations. So this is what allowed, and unfortunately, and Biden knew this. I worked with an attorney back then when he did this, and actually got an executive order written up for him and on his desk. He had it on his desk the whole time he was there. And because he didn't want to see anti-union, he was very pro-union, and he was afraid of the Border Patrol. He fucked up and he let him keep this designation. They really missed the boat. They really missed the boat on that. And this is all what helped Trump win the election, and why during that time I was saying the insurrection is on the border. The insurrection is on the border. But people, of course, I don't have that many followers. So anyway, but all this could have been stopped if the Democrats had just followed the law and disbanded the Border Patrol and CBP unions. And they didn't. And so today we see Trump using this exact same law that is meant to keep them from having their unions against other agencies, is what we're seeing. And the Border Patrol and CBP, of course, still have their unions. The reason why 5 USC 7112 little b makes this illegal for the Border Patrol union is because it says, quote, a unit shall not be determined to be appropriate under this section solely on the basis of the extent to which employees in the proposed unit have organized, nor shall a unit be determined to be appropriate if it includes any employee engaged in intelligence, counterintelligence, investigative, or security work which directly affects national security. It's pretty clear they're illegal. So even CBP and Border Patrol's own advisory committees to Homeland Security have stated, and I have this on the blog and I'll show you a copy of it, that if they were to receive this designation, that would then create this exempted service employees, so they wouldn't have to follow the rules because they are national security designated. It would then require them to remove their bargaining units, and the unions would no longer be able to collect union dues and could no longer exist. As we look back to the time when Donald Trump rewrote the Border Patrol union's contract, at the time, he more than doubled the amount of agents that were assigned as 24/7 union stewards, like the Vice President Art Del Cueto, like the former president, Brandon Judd. And those agents are line agents, they're field agents, and he took them out of the field at the time when he said the border was being overrun to do 24/7 what? Not necessarily union work. They call it union work, but really, what were they doing? They were on television constantly. They were constantly roaming around with right-wing politicians, right-wing media, right-wing influencers. They were just all over the place, spreading all of this invasion and open borders lie. And then additionally, what he did, and this is just astounding, it should be a criminal case of what he did. Collectively, each year in the Border Patrol, the union stewards are allowed to use, of their Border Patrol time, they are allowed to use collectively 18,000 hours a year to work on union issues. So if I'm a union steward, and I'm not a full-time union steward, but I do that in addition to my Border Patrol duties, which is what most of them do, then I'm working the field or I'm working wherever there's a shooting or something happens, and then somebody needs a union rep. So I go and do that. The time that I'm doing that, I'm getting paid to do that. We were allotted 18,000 hours a year collectively. But then in 2020, very quietly, Donald Trump changed it to 18,000 hours to 153,920 hours a year. It's like 9 times as much. So why did the Border Patrol suddenly need union officers doing 9 times as much if the Border Patrol did not increase their staffing at all? It's because he used, I see you staring. It's because he used the Border Patrol as a propaganda outlet. He used the Border Patrol to sell the fake narrative that he created with his Title 42 policy that made people cross illegally because there was no legal avenue. He had them selling all that propaganda to their right-wing sycophants and so forth and their fans. That's what he did. He turned the Border Patrol union into what this 5 USC 7112 warns against. That when you have agents who have national security clearances and they have access to this kind of information and intelligence, it can be turned around and used against the US government and against administrations that they don't like. Which is pretty much what they did. That is exactly what they did. And that is exactly why this law exists. And you can look at especially the last 2 years of the Biden administration, you can really see what the goal of those hours were. You see all these pictures of Art Del Cueto with all of these Republican leaders. He's with even really big people like Kevin McCarthy, former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. He's with all these people. You don't see him with that many Democrats. Occasionally you'll get, like your Cuellars and people like that are really Republican light. But that's what this is about. That was creating the optics. And so you see them, they were working with Texas Governor Greg Abbott on his political theater with Operation Lone Star. They only endorsed anti-immigrant Trump-approved candidates, and they appeared on television advertisements for candidates. They're supposed to give fair time and not be political like that when they're going around and talking to people about what the agency does. But of course, they do whatever they want to do. And again, Art Del Cueto's podcast is for the Border Patrol Union, is on Breitbart and is paid for and supplied by Breitbart, which also has ex-Border Patrol agents on their staff as writers. So that's how come they get all the best footage and everything. So the simple fact is that the Border Patrol Union, CBP Union, are breaking the law. They have been breaking the law by simply existing since Donald Trump designated them as national security agencies, just like he's designating NASA and the weather agency and all these other agencies as national security agencies. Yeah, the Border Patrol and CBP can keep their unions, but these other agencies can't. I think at a minimum, these unions need to be disbanded. And then obviously, at the very least, there needs to be an investigation. Who would do such an investigation? I have no idea, because we're in the shape we're in, but I think it's important to document these things. I think it's important to tell you about these things and to show you how they're manipulating the law. If the executive order is good enough for those other agencies, then it's damn well good enough for the United States Border Patrol and CBP. And if ICE has a union, then the same as well. I don't feel like spending much more time in this, but I think it's really important because I see this executive order go out and I'm not seeing a damn person in the single media showing you that this whole thing is a scheme and that he's allowing the agencies, the immigration enforcement agencies that are coming into our communities that have sold us this bullshit lie of invasion, this bullshit lie that migrants are the cause of all of our problems. They're okay to have their unions and keep their unions, but not these other people that are going to warn you about climate change. So this is bullshit. I'm calling big time bullshit on here that he is using this law, 5 USC 7112, lowercase b, 6, to go after these other agencies. And it will allow him to fire them without just cause. It will allow them to fire the employees so that they cannot do their work. That is what this is about. The immigration enforcement agencies have taken over this country. Think I'm wrong? What is the ATF doing? Immigration. What is the FBI doing? Immigration. What are people in your school doing? Immigration. What are people in businesses doing? Immigration. Everybody's ratting out everybody. Everybody is doing immigration right now. We have no money in education. We're looking at cutbacks on social services that we paid into. Our medical system is falling apart. Our infrastructure is falling apart. But there is always enough money for the Border Patrol, CBP, and ICE. Unbelievable.